ahead of schedule, but I think that's good because I'm a little biased, but this next talk is going to be pretty great. So, hello, good morning. I'm Paige Alberg with the Ramsey Washington Metro Watershed District, and I'm also on the Stormwater Research Council. And John wanted me to mention that aeration, those questions were not ignored in the pigeonhole. They will come up later this afternoon, so stay tuned for more on that. And I'm just going to jump right in. Our first presentation of this section is, so this section is about pond dredging and sediment removal. And up here with me we have Dave Lawson from the Ramsey Washington Metro Watershed District and Gareth Becker from Bar Engineering. And we're going to do this as an interview style presentation. So just jump right in, guys. First, I want to thank you both for being up here today. And we're going to start with a little background information about you two and your role with working in the pond dredge arena. Please introduce yourself to the audience and tell us about what you do at work and a little bit about what you do outside of work. Dave, we'll start with you.
Yeah, thanks, Paige. I started with the district in 2006, so I've been there about 20 years. I started as an intern and then went over to the water quality department, and then it was around 2016, 2017 when I started doing the pond cleanup program that we have and more of project management that we have going on. Gareth?
Yeah, thanks. I'm Gareth Becker. Started with Bar in 2011, kind of working with the district mostly that whole time. I'm a civil specialist and do a lot of reality capture, drone data collection, and terrestrial LiDAR scanning, that kind of thing. Yeah, so a lot of civil design background.
Anything about these pictures up here?
Oh, yeah,
Are
sure.
you
Some board games, snowboarding. The fish are quite a bit smaller than Dave's fish. That's never going to change. We're actually together on that fishing trip. Yeah, snowman.
Anything else on hunting, Dave?
No, I'm an avid outdoorsman. I like to get out. I train dogs, a lot of dogs too, so it's a fair amount of fun at the weekends.
And fun at the office when he brings them in. All right, let's get started with the most basic question. Dave, we're going to start with you again. Why are we dredging? Why is the Watershed District involved, and what is the goal that's driving the district's involvement?
So water quality is a big driver for this, along with just keeping these ponds maintained and letting them function as they should be, as designed that comes through. So a lot of these ponds, as we all know why we're here today, they fill up with sediment. They're doing exactly what they're supposed to do. They're there, been designed. It's a matter of when we want to clean them out, how full do these ponds get when we start looking at when we need to get in there and bring in the larger equipment. So in general rule of thumb, I think about when they start getting about 40-50% full, it's kind of when we start putting a game plan together. You start doing your tests, you start kind of figuring out how we want to attack the pond and get it done. So I started noticing a lot of full ponds, half full ponds, 3/4 full ponds when we were doing our capital improvement projects throughout the district. Started asking a few questions like, where is the sediment going? If I'm seeing sediment sitting at an outlet structure and it's right at that invert at the bottom of the pipe, that next rain event, you go to the next pond that's funneling to, that sediment's going over there. So what can we do to prevent that and keep these ponds viable, keep them working as they should when they were designed? So that kind of prompted a couple of questions through Gareth, Paige, other people in the district of what can the watershed do to help cities, help partner cities with the pond management, with the sediment management, and then we can actually clean these ponds out, hopefully with a larger contract, larger dollars and cents. With a larger contract, we likely get it for a little bit cheaper price than we would if we do it individual ponds versus this year we cleaned about 14 ponds out as our capital improvement project this winter. But at the end of the day, the goal is just to save money, keep the sediments where they're supposed to be in the ponds and before they get downstream and do it economically.
All right. Gareth, do you have something to add about the why? And also, can you discuss how you and Bar are involved in the process? What's your role with Ramsey Washington?
Sure, yeah. From a science and program standpoint, as Dave touched on, the dredging is really about resetting the performance of the pond. So, like you said, they're designed to fail slowly over time by storing those sediments and pollutants. Once you lose that storage, you're not just losing the water quality benefit, but you're also losing the hydraulic function many times. So flooding or other things that can happen. So what the CIP, or that capital improvement project, allows us to do is treat the dredging as like a planned infrastructure renewal, not so much of an emergency response that we have to respond to with high water or that kind of thing. Maybe just to back up a little bit, so that capital improvement project that Dave mentioned is kind of the catch-all in the district for any infrastructure that needs improvement. Often use it as a vehicle to install new filters or pilot programs or testing or filtering or anything like that. Whereas the PEX program is the public entity cost share and kind of piggybacks onto that CIP and acts as a mechanism for public entities, mostly municipalities. The county participates a lot, but as a mechanism to split those costs and create that scale of making the costs go down. Yeah, how I'm involved, like I said, started in 2011 and joined an exclusive club of the district of dropping a stop log into the Allen Treatment Pond outlet to join an elite crew of people who have done that. That outlet's probably half full of stop logs at this point. So BAR's been with the district, working with the district since their inception. So congrats on 50 years, I guess. My role at BAR has kind of evolved alongside the CIP program. The CIP has been happening since about 2011. Not that maintenance wasn't happening before that, but since about 2011, or when I started in 2011, just mostly starting with survey and CAD work and civil design, and then moving on to like a program project manager for it. So as far as BAR supports that by making sure the technical and contractual side scales cleanly year after year and provide that consistency, cost, I wouldn't say cost certainty, but a little bit of clarity on costs.
All right, sounds great. Dave, can you tell us more about who you are working with, who owns these ponds, and who is responsible for the maintenance of them?
So we're mostly working with cities within our watershed district and the counties that are in there. The district itself only owns a handful of ponds. I'll go out and early in our, actually for those in the crowd that are getting emails in probably a couple weeks, I'll be sending our pond email list out that says, hey, if you have any interesting ponds that you would like assessed or to look at, let me know. Cities will then give me a list of ponds. I'll do a field verification, walk around it, check the inlets, check the outlets, see generally what I can see. Do I see deltas anywhere? A lot of these ponds are chocolate milk and are difficult to assess visually when you actually look at it. You know, how do you get in there? So a survey result is really what drives a lot of these cleanouts. And if you got that 50%, 60% full, it's important to get that quantity of material because then you can put a dollars and cents associated with that. So I'll go out, like I said, I'll do the initial inspection, I'll run around, I'll report back to the cities, find out what they're thinking on certain things. Usually, maybe a city will give me one pond, maybe they'll give me a dozen, and somewhere between half of that are the ones that will actually progress in their survey and go with it. They have, cities and counties might have different reasons than the watershed might have to clean ponds, where maybe water quality based, where there could be an extension to a school that's coming on and they're gonna go out, so they need to get to a pond before they can't have access to it anymore, or at least ease of access to get in there. Sometimes there's a playground that's being built, other times, like I said, building additions and just getting ahead of some of that construction work. So we visually do it, but the watershed is in the process. I think we did it, gosh, it was about 10, 15 years ago, and now we're updating it again, is the pond prioritization study that we have. So if cities don't have a good feel of where their ponds are, we might be able to help them out and say, hey, clean these ponds out, or give you an idea of in 5, 6 different ponds within your city boundaries that we can, we can help or recommend that they clean out. It might be a different reason, water quality based for the district, where Public Works might have, maybe there's flooding, maybe there's block stuff, so there could be some different stuff there. But at the end of the day, if the pond sediment needs to go, it needs to go, we gotta get it out of there.
Yeah, great. All right, Gareth, let's get into the mud, so to say. How are you setting up this work, and how is pond sediment dredging accomplished?
So maybe to just right off the bat, the work is kind of all year round, 365 days a year. Things come up for CIP or PEX program, like look at this pond, or based on inspections of district staff, bar staff, surveyors, other people, people participating in the PEX program, notice something and flag it. Usually it goes to Dave, and then we discuss it and take a look at it. But as you can see on the slide here, the project really runs from Dave's email looking for interest in the PEX program until the next June when the construction ends. So the construction contract, won't go through all of this stuff, but we basically work on this project up until construction start in the last week of December or first week of January to take advantage of that winter work, the better pricing, the ease of access in the winter, the frozen conditions, larger load limits on trucks, all sorts of reasons to do the work in the winter. Yeah, that's kind of how the flow or schedule of it works. But as the contract's coming to an end here, we'll be wrapping up this year's CIP pretty soon, and then basically start working on the next one.
All right. Sounds like you have a great system and you've worked closely with each other and partners to streamline that process. Dave, what practices and methods are you using for pond dredging? What are you thinking about as they get started?
So this is disruptive work. A lot of these ponds are behind people's homes. We've seen good examples of ponds that are kind of wide out in the middle of nowhere, but for some odd reason I generally seem to get the ponds that are difficult to get in. The access is hard. We got sheds, we got fences to go down, houses are close together. You get sprinkler systems, underground sprinkler systems. You're dealing right next to, I mean, would you like, gosh, what we do, almost 2,000 yards, and you get that many semi-trucks going right next to your house starting at 7 o'clock in the morning, and we're going over this pipe because that's our access in there. So setting that expectation with the property owners is pretty big for me. I usually give them my direct phone call so they can call me if anything comes up, or my direct cell phone number, and just making sure they understand of what's coming outside their house. And a lot of people just like watching it. It's entertaining work. It's to see the big equipment, to see the scuba. It's just not something you see in your backyard every day. So very, very often there's a group of the locals that are out there watching and asking questions, and just drinking coffee and watching us scoop pond muck. So it's kind of interesting, like I was hitting. This is disruptive work. It's big equipment work. We're coming in there with excavators. We're coming in there with dump trucks. You figure you're cleaning out 1,000 cubic yards or 1,000 tons out of a pond. An average truck, you're looking at maybe 15-ish tons. You can load them heavier, you can load them lighter. So the amount of trucks to get that couple thousand tons out, it's quite a bit of work that comes in there. So on top of that, the larger equipment that we go in, dewatering is a concern. It helps us out quite a bit because we can keep the pond muck within the pond, especially for BMPs and that downstream, because you're scooping out, it's creating chocolate milk. The pond muck when you're done it's a turbid water when you're scooping. Every time you're scooping, it's dirty stuff. So trying to keep that material in the pond itself and not have it outlet and kind of go downstream is pretty good. So other than that, it's big equipment work. We've only seen a couple other approaches to clean out this work. This year we had kind of a bad, weird winter. We ran out of ice early, and one of the ponds that we did, they brought in kind of a dingo that was in. So it was a track machine that went back. They put in probably a couple yards in the back of this dingo, and then they had to load it up and kind of drop it off in a pit so an excavator could then physically load the truck. Otherwise, we have another site where we use, I don't know the technical name for it, but I call it a cattail buster. It's on a pontoon. It's got chains that beats up the cattails, and then they got a harvester that goes in the back and kind of collects all that matter that it goes through, and that's used for lakes where we couldn't actually get in the pond, or maybe the side of the road was super busy. We couldn't close down the lane of traffic along those lines. So just working within the boundaries and the limitations of the site. But yeah, like I said, it's big equipment. Those are really the only two other approaches that I have that I've seen done. It's winter work. It's significantly easier. You don't have to worry about rolling edges as much, or cracking driveways, cracking bituminous, cracking curbs for that matter. Take a bunch of photos before you start any of this work, because it's you're going to break something, and that way you can say, yeah, this crack was there or it wasn't there, for good or for bad. I think we got one of the cleanouts actually we did this year. It's kind of a step-by-step on the photos. The upper left photo is gonna be kind of a pre-photo of what the pond looked like before we cleaned it out. A couple process of cleaning out, like I said, big equipment, long reaches really help with that. And then the bottom right, I think, is the aftermath of what that pond looked like as it kind of reset. And this was a full clean out where we pulled out, gosh, about 2,500 tons, 3,000 tons of material. So it was a good clean out.
Awesome. Gareth, any other methods you wanted to share?
Yeah, maybe I just mentioned super uncommon, but I mean, we've all seen like barge dredging where you're using, if you see in the Mississippi River and create these huge spoil piles. Never used that as part of the CIP. There might come a time where that is the best method for access or other, but also we've used fly ash for cleaning out an alum treatment pond. It has some ecological downsides. It putting some gross stuff into the pond and then pulling it all back out. So really uncommon, but maybe I just also wanted to mention, you mentioned the dewatering, helping to protect downstream waters. These contracts and the plan set includes all matter of erosion control measures that are designed in, given the nature of the project owner, a watershed district, we want to be really careful to protect the downstream waters. And even if, a lot of it is, put in a floating silt curtain, usually that's not needed. I mean, if there's a big spring thaw or large rainfall, we have the capability to deploy all these things and kind of monitor the weather really closely as we're doing the project. Yeah, I guess maybe I'll just mention the warm-up really causes some trouble, but we've over the years gotten this to be pretty consistent and be able to deal with it pretty well. Monitoring the weather that's coming, making sure that the contractor is kind of prepared for that, and if we're seeing that there's weather or moisture or precipitation coming over the weekend, installing some additional BMPs or erosion protection measures. A lot of times that leaves the contract at the end with a lot of money on the table. For the contractor, we write it into the contract that that's very possible, and that the erosion protection measures are minimum and can always be more. So the contractors, they're free to install some of this stuff ahead of time, but oftentimes they don't install it, until there's a need to do so. So I think different contractors would do that differently. Just want to point that out.
All right. Speaking of warm-ups, that's good segue to our next pictures. Dave, you've already mentioned some challenges that you've come across, but what other hurdles have you encountered when doing this work? Can you share with us a little bit how you've dealt with that?
A lot of permits can be a challenge. It's not difficult to do, but a timely thing. And fortunately enough for the district and our work is we are working a lot with cities and counties, and they can help me out with the permits and the right-of-ways or closing down the lane or what they would prefer on that. But permits are always big. Dealing with the DNR, and if any MPARS permits need to be done with any of these ponds, I'll reach out to our area hydrologist early. I'll work with our GIS person, and we'll get a map of every pond that we're looking at cleaning out. I'll then go through that with our area hydrologist. Which one of these are going to need a MPARS permit, which ones don't. Sometimes we need 3, 4 of them. This year I don't think we needed a MPARS permit at all, which was pretty nice, simply for the fact that it's an online portal, but it's a time thing. Once you hit submit, they have 120 days or maybe a bit longer to just get back to you. Our area hydrologist is pretty good about getting back. Otherwise, I might call in to kind of poke and prod, like, hey, we need to get in here next week. Can we do it, or can you look at our permit? But that's always a challenge, as I hinted before. Access in these private properties. I mean, would you want this happening on your property? That can always be a challenge. Larger trees that grow up, because this work doesn't happen very often. So the last time somebody came in 20, 30 years ago, so that little twig is now a little bit bigger. So what does that mean for getting in, or if there's a fence in between there that you weren't expecting? This year we did our pre-fall inspections. I thought it was a smooth sailing, easy way in. And as soon as the contractors show up, there was 3 brand new homes that showed up right in this spot with garages. It's like, oh, huh. Type of, now what are we going to do with that? So you just kind of you think you got a plan, but you always got to be ready to roll. And then some of these ponds, they don't seem to have bottoms. You'll go through there and you just sink. I don't even know if we got any, yeah, you can, the excavators on the back, you know, they might fall off their mats or they might fall off the road. And I've seen excavators, pretty stuck, pretty sunk because there is no bottom to these ponds on some of them. So that can be a challenge about that. One of the worries early on in the project for recording the loads, recording the muck that's coming out of there, we use yardage versus weight tickets. Yardage is fine, but now I need to agree with the contractor on how full are your trucks. Do I gotta follow a contractor to the pit to make sure they're going with it? Where now I really enjoy weights. Truck can show up, goes right on the scale. Now I know exactly with how much tonnage is being taken out of the pond, and there is no guesswork on, yeah, that pond's about, that's 15 yards or so, and then the next one's a little short, and then I just don't have to be there and watch it. So weight tickets are a pretty good way to go on this. Another kind of portal, it's not really our stuff, but a lot of these places, SKB, for example, they have online portals. So every time a truck shows up and dumps their load, I get an email ping. So I know when those trucks come through, and then depending on the contractor as well, we got them now where every pond will go to, you know, Wheelock Pond or whatever that one is. I'll get a notification of where that muck is going, so I can keep track of the individual ponds and kind of like that quantity of material that's coming out of there. But yeah, those are kind of it for the challenges that we've had over the years.
Overall, it runs perfectly, we'll
Yeah,
say.
no problems.
No
No,
problems.
it does though. I mean, it's everything comes up in any project that you do, but you know, at the end of the day, you're just scooping muck. You're just scooping pond muck. You know, some of them are a little bit firmer, but you're putting mud in trucks and you're hauling it away. I mean, there's more complicated to it, but at the basis of it, you're hauling muck.
Got it. Yes. All right, Gareth. So Dave told us about the challenges. Overall, it sounds like this program has been very successful. What are some of the specific wins you'd like to highlight for us?
Yeah, well, for one, we identified some significant cost savings by skipping the core sampling and depositing sediment just directly in neighboring watersheds.
Sorry.
You weren't supposed to
I
laugh so
couldn't hold
quickly.
it.
It's an April Fool's
That's
Day.
April Fool's. That was for Kyle. Wherever Kyle is.
That was for Kyle, yeah, South Washington for sure. Well, I guess what I'll say is successes to me is not so much a single pond or specific technology, although we've come up with some pretty inventive BMPs along the way, but it's more about the scale. So taking, you know, removing tens of thousands of cubic yards of sediment, as you can see there, a lot of that would not have happened one-off, certainly for the district, and you know, maybe we mentioned a little bit earlier, but public works staff, municipalities, counties, other public entities, I don't begin to understand all the things that they have to keep track of and do, and can often be staff limited to do some of this work. So the district stepping in and kind of helping get these projects across the finish line, bundling them together, getting some economies of scale. So yeah, I'm looking at it more, it's the scale that helps us improve the methods and reduce the surprises, and give the districts and cities and public entities maybe better cost certainty over time. So the value of the CIP and the PEX program isn't just cleaner ponds, it's turning what used to be these more rare or risky projects into more of a repeatable public works practice. Also, I think Dave mentioned, but kind of successes, our ability to roll with the punches and kind of be confident that we're getting this work done and providing value and water quality and ecological benefit over time.
Yeah, rolling with the punches is important. Something pops up, anybody that's ever done a project, whether it's a pond clean out or just building a parking lot, I mean, something weird happens. Just gotta roll with it. You'll get it done, just gotta roll with it.
Yeah, awesome. And I think too, a shout out to our partners who have been part of this, have really made it a huge success in working with us and helping us develop it into what it is today. So I think we're at the question time, unless you guys have anything else.
I figured there'd be a
Okay.
couple questions.
Yeah,
Sure.
thank you. I'll let John do that.
We have lots of questions.
I don't know if that's good or bad.
Okay, you can start with the first one.
Okay, all right. How does the watershed justify spending money to help the municipalities to meet their MS4 obligations? Dredging ponds isn't above and beyond their existing obligations.
So I guess we weren't that clear. The cities and the municipalities, they pay for this work. We pay, the watershed district pays for the mobilization and the demobilization to it. We also develop a bar, we hire bar to do the plan sets with it. But the actual dredging, the actual pond clean out work, the scooping of the mud, the erosion control, the bed blanket, the seed, all of that, the cities do pay for that work. And we just help them out with some of the mob and demob. And at the end of the day, it does, I justify it because it's a watershed district wide, and if we're able to clean these out within the district, they would never get done likely, or the number of these wouldn't get done within the district, so that's a good cost savings that we can do to bounce around it and do a lot of these pond cleanouts as well and help the cities out. When Gareth hinted is they got other things to do besides just pond management.
Yeah, I think that's good. I'll just add one thing that, so now that we've been doing this so long, cities can plan, as you all know, like budgeting is tough, so they know Dave's cycle when he's going to approach them so they can budget too and have that. It's a little bit delayed, so we don't invoice them until the project's done, so it's not like they're paying the invoices right away, so a little benefit to them
Yeah,
that way.
That helps a little bit at the end. I'll just, billing in dollars and cents wise, it's at the very end of the last thing of the project is when they get the bill, so it's not nickel and a dime and it's sending you a bill here and a bill there. It's okay, we are done. We paid our final bill, here's the invoice, and all those monies are agreed upon ahead of time, and agreements or MOUs may be done with the cities and the counties with that as well.
And we would just add, there are times where a public entity will want to get a pond clean out, maybe because some residents are complaining about it, but then we go and do survey and testing and all these things and inspection, and like, it doesn't really make much sense to do this one. You can handle that on your own kind of thing, so break it off. It's not very common, but the district's kind of in charge of who participates and how, and maybe prioritize the things in the district that need to be done. So if the project were to get too big, the district ponds, the district capital improvement project, the sites that district needs to get done will get prioritized over the tax participants. Haven't run into too much of that though.
No,
Pretty much there's room for everybody.
This year was close. I think we did about 20,000 yards, 20,000 tons of material this year, and then you start getting into arguments with different levels of contractors that you're dealing with the larger firms, with this kind of the smaller people that you might. So there's pluses and minuses to how big you want your contract to be.
Yep. All right. Since we often do not have as-built or designs for old ponds in need of dredging, how do you determine the floor, the bottom, to evaluate how much material should be removed?
Sounds like a good bar question.
Yeah, I mean, a wizard hat, I don't know. If anyone, this is a plea to do an as-built after you construct something. This helps so much with the work that we do, because we have to get these quantities within the ballpark in order to be fair to contractors and be fair to how we're gonna construct this, because if things aren't, semi-accurate, you're gonna run into a lot of trouble and get some pushback. So we have a couple different methods, so yeah. Ranking them, the best is an as-built after construction. Second best would be a design drawing, contours, showing volumes, having some elevations and other things called out. And then what we end up doing most often is a push survey. So we will get in there usually with a U-boat or canoe or something. We have like a big foot for the survey rod that can sit on that soft sediment and get a good elevation on the top of the sediment, and then also taking that off, pushing down so you feel a hard bottom. It's not perfect, but we found good success with it. It gives us pretty accurate, and we can explain how we came up with this data and the volume that we're getting, and we usually get pretty close. But
What happens if you hit a peat layer and you think that's the bottom?
yeah, well, you try and stop the contractor from removing that peat. With limited success. So again, roll with punches, right? And things can happen, and you end up going over quantity and have to have that discussion. A little easier for me to have that discussion with Dave versus a PEX participant who had budgeted a specific amount
a specific pond. We get creative with it, by moving quantities from a different pond or pushing a pond to the next year. We found success with that.
And I would say with some of that pushing ponds to the next year, delaying it, once you do your survey data, I'd say a survey is probably good for, depending on the pond, 3, maybe 5 years. Generally, if you get it a year or two, but 3 years is what your survey is gonna dictate and kind of give you that quantity of material. And we do that core sample, and then we saw, I think it was yesterday, we saw for how many cores you need for your X amount of pond size. I say that's good for 2 years that they do, and a lot of pits are saying the same thing. So some of that, if you're not ready to clean out your pond, don't necessarily core it yet. Don't survey it. I mean, you could assume what it is, but if you're not until you're ready to do it. Now you can get an idea so you know where this is going to go, but generally I'll always assume this is a type 2, type 3 material. We've got years worth of costs associated with that material, and there's different grade levels of where material. It's a type 1, type 2, type 3 can go, and then there's a type 4 that's really hot. There's only a couple places in the U.S. that'll accept that, but that survey results then dictate where the sediment needs to be disposed of.
All right, time for one more maybe? Ooh. As winters warm, how will you maintain your current rate of dredging?
Get creative. Sometimes lately we've been building roads out to ponds. I think one of the photos had a contractor we used a couple of years. It seems to be winning this. He'll use planks. He'll use really good construction mats out there, but he'll also basically build 12 by 12s, 12 foot long, join them together so they're 8, 10 feet long, and then they'll build a road physically out there with these 12 by 12s, and then work their way back if we don't have good ice and good solid conditions. So we're really just building a road out in the middle of the pond and then pulling it back. Sometimes we'll use, they'll put a geotextile down and they'll put mulch down, and when we do that, I'll ask for, I don't want to pay for the mulch when you have to pull out and get out of there. I want to pay for the pond mud. This is part of your mobilization and your access to get into the site. So I want maybe those load tickets or how many loads of mulch that they're coming in, so I don't have to get that isn't mixed in with the pond mud that we're getting out.
Maybe I'd just add, as we're confronted with this, we can have some levers we can pull, right? You can use a larger contractor outfit that has more equipment. They can do the ponds faster. You could change the contract to shorten it up so it has to be done within these couple months. And if you have a lot of ponds, that's gonna be a bigger contract. We haven't needed to go down that road, but we'll get creative. We'll roll with these bunches, and this work will get done. Unless if there's no winner, then we'll cry ourselves to sleep, I guess. But we'll find a way to get the muck out regardless.
Awesome. All right, I think we're at time. Thank you both for being here.
Thank you.
All right. Oh yeah. And there's Paula. Okay.
Thank you, Paige.
Yes.
I'm gonna move.
Yeah.
You can.
Okay.
Yeah, let me just transfer.
Yes.